I am very excited to introduce our next speaker. Nate Beine is a senior at Whitworth University, studying biology and environmental studies. He serves as president of the Environmental Action Coalition, which is our environmental club at Whitworth. After graduating, he hopes to pursue a career in ecological research or conservation work. Nate has lived in Spokane for much of his life and has a deep appreciation for the unique ecosystems of the region. This past November, and what he'll be sharing with us today, is that he attended the UN Conference on Climate Change, COP26, in Glasgow, Scotland, as a member of the Christian Climate Observers Program. And he's excited to share about this experience and what motivated him to attend the conference. So let's welcome Nate.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Abby. Thanks so much for having me here today. Allie and Lily, it was really wonderful to hear from you two and all the wonderful things you're doing in Spokane. Super encouraging. So thank you so much for that. Yeah, as Dr. Abby said, my name is Nate. I'm a senior at Whitworth, and I'm very excited to talk to you today about my experience of getting to go to the conference in Glasgow with this really awesome program, and a little bit behind what motivated me to be there, what motivated some of the other participants to be there, and what just motivates people of our age to get involved in these things. So I'll give just a brief introduction. I have a feeling many of you are familiar with the UN climate conferences. If you're not, I'd encourage you to look a little into the history of them and the goals. There's been some misleading rhetoric at times about them, but essentially in a nutshell, it's the coming together of all the countries that have signed on to the Paris Agreement that was signed in 2015, which aims to reduce emissions and keep global warming limited to a more livable amount. And so these happen, every year. This was the first one after COVID. And I was really privileged to get to actually travel there and participate as an observer at the conference. And I was able to do this through the Christian Climate Observer Program, which is a really wonderful program sponsored by several Christian environmental organizations, such as the Evangelical Environmental Network, that support and sponsor Christians from all around the world of all different ages to go and attend as an observer, and then to bring back what they learned to their congregations, to their communities, and to people of faith where they live. So yeah, it was a very wonderful, wonderful program. I got to meet a lot of amazing people and learn a lot. And then upon coming back, got to share a lot of my experiences with people of the Whitworth community, as well as some of the greater Spokane area. And as I was preparing for this conference, John asked me some really good questions about what motivated me to take part in this and to do this program. I think sometimes our motivations can be really obvious to ourselves, and so it's good to reflect on that and to be able to share that with other people, as well as why other young people would show up and be there at this conference, which is obviously such a privilege, but isn't going there and attending wasn't without challenges for me or the other participants. Some of those involved, applying for the programs to get us there, as well as fundraising to get to Glasgow for this conference was obviously some work for me, and then especially so for those coming from the developing world to even raise the funds to get there. At the same time, obviously, this happened in November at the height of the Omicron wave, and so the complications with traveling with COVID were a lot to work through, of testing requirements. There's risk of exposure, especially for those in countries who aren't as privileged due to the inequity in vaccine distribution. And so that was definitely a hurdle to clear. And then, of course, for those of us who were students or young professionals, just getting the time off of work, missing schoolwork to make up on, there were definitely some sacrifices made to be there. And so I think it's really important to understand what would drive young people who were there participating in the conference, as well as just coming to Glasgow to express that this is important. What would drive so many people to do this? What are the motivations that do power the young people and even those in our community like Allie and Lily? So I'll share a little bit about me personally, what those are for me, and then as well as some of the experiences of others who I met there at the conference. And so for me, the primary one, and which is really important for going as a member of this Christian group, is my faith. And that might seem counterintuitive to some, looking around sort of at our nation and, I don't know, just some of the landscape of churches and things. That might not be as easily apparent why my faith would be a driver in this. But I think you don't have to look very far through the scriptures, the Christian scriptures, to understand exactly why caring for the earth is important. Just in the first chapters of Genesis, one of the first commissions given is to Avad and Shamar, to work and to keep the earth. And so I see that as primary to our Christian, those of us who call ourselves Christians, our mission is to keep this good world that God calls good. As well as there's the commission to all creatures, not just to humankind, to be blessed, to be fruitful, and to multiply. And so this is obviously, I'm sure many of you have heard many of the statistics, but something that breaks my heart just as someone interested in the natural world and studying biology are the findings of the World Wildlife Fund's Living Planet report from 2018 that found an average decline of 60% population size across all vertebrates between 1970 and 2014, which is just, a staggering loss of natural life. And I got the chance, while I was there, to hear a talk from the environmentalist and author Bill McKibben, who characterized this trend as running Genesis in reverse, or a decreation process. So for me as a person of faith, this is something that I feel very motivated to work against and to work to save these beautiful creatures. So, as well as the humans who are suffering due to these impacts. So that was a primary motivation for me. Another one was just my studies and what I have been studying in college. I've always loved the natural world and have had a desire to study it, to learn it better, and to work to protect it. And I'm since I want to pursue a career in this, it's disturbing to me the losses we're facing. And that goes for all young people, I'd say, who are trying to make their careers and livelihoods, that they're threatened by these environmental crises we're facing. So that's a strong motivation to even put things like school or their work on the back burner so that they can come to these events and push for more action. I also, through my time at school, have gotten the chance to last summer work as a research assistant, working out in the sagebrush steppe with cheatgrass, the invasive annual grass monitoring. And so got to see some of our regional impacts and the impacts of both invasive species and the warming temperatures on wildfire, not just in our forests, but also in our grasslands. And I've just been able to see that up close and personal, and the effects of some of those things that, just really hit home to me why this is important. And that brings me to my last motivation of why young people in our community even are seeing the importance of this is we're seeing at the regional scale even impacts in our everyday lives of our changing world. Many of the speakers have spoken to wildfires and how these are natural events that are actually integral to many of our ecosystems, but as Mr. Vaughan mentioned yesterday, not at the scale we're seeing nowadays, or at the frequency we're seeing nowadays. And so I remember even in high school, every fall we would have at least a week of sports had to be inside because the wildfire smoke was too bad to be outside doing sports. So we're seeing these impacts in our everyday lives of forest fires. Obviously, there's been whole communities that have lost their towns and livelihoods due to these. We've been seeing, of course, the effects of extended drought due to these warm periods. Many of our speakers spoke to the effects of these on local watersheds, on the farmers, as Aaron Esser mentioned yesterday, in our region, facing harder times due to these changes in weather patterns. And then, of course, we've seen just, the effects on the watershed. I was out last summer when I was doing that research at Swanson Lakes Fish and Wildlife Refuge by Creston, and we saw at times during the summer some of the lakes were dried up, which of course has profound effects on wildlife who are migrating through those areas, as well as people who depend on local water systems. So that's a huge impact that we're seeing, even at our scale. And while these impacts are really significant, even for people in our community, I have to say that unfortunately they, by comparison to some of the people I talk to in Glasgow, are mild compared to other parts of the world and what people are going through. I'll just share the experience of some of my peers in the Christian Climate Observer Program and where they came from, and what drove them to be there. Kat Jenkins was another student from North America, from British Columbia, who was there, and of course they saw this last summer, temperature records and wildfires, as well as right when she got back from the conference, they actually had the massive flooding events from the reversal of rivers that delayed. They had to take time off school for that right after she got back from this conference. So that motivated her to be there, as well as another one of my peers, really inspirational, Marinella Ubaldo, if you have the time to look her up, is a really inspirational climate activist, and has been since in 2013 when she was just 16 years old, living in the Philippines. Her town was destroyed by Super Typhoon Haiyan, and she lost family members, she lost her home, she lost friends, and that prompted her to want to work on these things, which is really, she's very inspirational. It's really amazing, but it's kind of unfair in a sense that she, rather than pursuing the things that maybe she would want to, she's now having to dedicate all of her time to working on climate change issues, is really just not fair to her and to others in her community. As well as another member of our group, Shimizo Mupara from Zimbabwe, is working on reforestation there to counter some of the effects of the historic deforestation combined with climate-driven droughts that are causing food shortages in that country. So I don't know, it was just very, very interesting, or very hard to hear all the stories of people and what they are facing in our world, as well as inspiring to see what they're doing about it. And while we, may not be hit as hard in this region as other places, we still are feeling those impacts. And as Ali and Lily mentioned, people are concerned in our generation. So while it is inspirational that younger people are leading these movements, it really shouldn't have to be that way. And that was something that was really amazing about this program I participated in, was we had young people my age all the way up to our oldest member was 77 and retired. So if I could remind you something today, it's just that this is really something that has to be done by everyone of all generations. And yeah, just, I don't know, we can gain a lot from the diversity of ages within this movement. And we need people of all ages to be involved if things are going to change. So thinking about just how can we as individuals, have an effect on these really massive global issues. And I really like what Ali pointed out about the importance of community action on these things. Sometimes it can feel out of our control, different even what our government does or what other countries do. But one thing that I learned from my time at the conference from multiple professionals was that community action is not just impactful in this, but it's actually completely necessary if things are going to change. So that's why things like the Sustainability Action Plan in Spokane that you hear more about later are so exciting. We have a real opportunity as smaller communities, as cities, as student groups, to make these changes that we need. And it has to actually come from that level if we're going to see substantial change. So I think that's very encouraging for us in a place like Spokane. And yeah, just for a few suggestions of those things, I really like what the climate scientist Katherine Hayhoe has to say in one of her books about the lack sometimes of feeling individual power. Is one of the best things to do is to stop being such an individual. We're very individualized in our culture, and it's important to remember sometimes that we are part of bigger groups where we can have an impact. We can bring others along who have similar passions as we do. So the first thing I would suggest is just for those of you who are here coming from a faith context is to get your congregations involved. Churches are, for some of us, are some of our most important social groups and actually have a lot of influence in our lives and sometimes a lot of resources and can be very powerful in taking action for good things in the world. That can be as simple as just looking at how your church consumes, sort of where you're getting your resources from, how to limit maybe the waste you're producing, those sort of things, to getting involved in community efforts like Growing Neighbors, the program in Spokane that So yeah, I would just encourage getting involved, getting connected with people. And I know that this can be an uncomfortable experience sometimes. Sometimes it's outside of our comfort zone within our congregations, or for some in our congregations. But I would just say that from my perspective, as a Christian, I don't think Jesus died on the cross for us to be in a place of comfort. I think he died to bring restoration to the creation, and he wants us to be a part of it, which is really special. So I would encourage you to, push into those uncomfortable situations. For those of us who come from other faith traditions or don't come from a faith group at all, I think we all have spheres of influence that places where we're connected, whether it be at our jobs we work or in a sports group that we're a part of or something. We all have those connections. So I would encourage you to be thinking about that. Think about where your spheres of influence are and where you could be maybe pushing for some changes. And then the final thing I'd say is just conversation is really important. These can be hard things to talk about sometimes. Sometimes the language we use around them can make people uncomfortable or shut down conversations. But I'd encourage you just to be courageous in engaging with those people and showing empathy and listening and expressing why the challenges our world is facing are important to you. And yeah, just to be brave in having those conversations, and just want to remind you that, yeah, this change does come at the community level, not just in the political or global levels. And yeah, just find what it is that motivates you individually. What are the issues? We've heard a lot this conference about it, so many different things in our community. What are the things that you are inspired about and want to work to make a change in? And so I think I'll leave you today with just a quote from a Christian environmental leader, Ben Lowe, who works with Al-Rasha, which is a Christian conservation organization. And he says, "It has taken masses of people to deplete the world's fisheries, overdraw the underground aquifers, clear-cut the rainforest, and even modify the climate. It will also take masses to turn this unsustainable trend around." And so just a reminder that, yeah, we really, in the community level, can have a big impact. Yeah, thank you so much for hearing from me today, and I'd love to, if we have time, take any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Nate. I think we do have time for one or two questions, if anyone has one right now. I've got the roving mic. And actually, I'm gonna have you speak into it so we can have it on the recording.
So I have less of a question than a statement and an encouragement. Jennifer Ogden, Spokane Park Board, and I noticed we have Council President Beggs here too. The Park Department would love to have the involvement of Allie and Lily and you in providing support to your groups, using our parks as a resource. We have lots of volunteer opportunities. We are trying to form friends groups for every park in the city. We would love to have the younger perspective. We were so excited recently. We have 2 members of the park board now who are in their 30s, and we were so excited to think we had all that youth. And to you, that probably sounds old. So we would love to have your perspective, so come and talk to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Hi, I'm Retta, and I would just love to hear something that surprised you and something that excited you from your time at the conference.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks. Yeah, I think something that surprised me was just to see the broad spectrum of people who were there. Just all sorts of different, obviously there's people from all over the world, but there was also, people from all sorts of different walks of life. There were scientists, there were people working in conservation, there were people from the financial sector working with investment in things like clean energy. So just, a very wide spectrum of people who all think it's important and have a lot of expertise that are working for these things. I thought was maybe not surprising, but I think, I'd sometimes picture it as just being like certain people that care about it, but this was clear that it's an important issue to everybody. And that leads into kind of, I think, what excited me was seeing, not just at the conference itself, but also outside the conference, there were a number of marches that took place of just like tens of thousands of people who were there to express that this is important, not just to some of us, but to a large scale of society, and just to see multiple generations, see families there, see all sorts of people coming out to say this is important to them was really encouraging.
Great presentation.
Thanks.
By all three of you. From my perspective, I think there's been a much needed rebalancing at the international level to include biodiversity. How familiar are you all with the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services?
Yeah, so that was, like you said, it's become more of a focus even in these conferences. And I know like groups like the IUCN have had their yearly meetings as well. And the importance of biodiversity has been, been coming back to people's attention, which is really important. So I definitely did see at this conference a lot of talk about those things and about trying to find nature-based solutions. Obviously, there's a lot of, we have to be very intentional about how we do those things and making sure that, the people, like indigenous groups, that we're not just using it as an excuse to take away rights and things. But it's really encouraged me to see the emphasis on let's try to fix these problems, not just with the technological solutions, as great as those are. Let's try to get back to the root of what made our world balanced in the first place and preserve the resources we already have and make sure we're not losing those any faster than we have to.
All right, let's thank Nate and also Allie and Lily one more time.
Thank you.